بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear viewers. Welcome to another podcast with me, your host, Wasim Ahmed. Alhamdulillah, today we have joining us Ustaz Muhammad Ali from Bradford Muslim College. Assalamu alaikum, Ustaz. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sheikh. Alhamdulillah, as always, I'm well. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, everything is good. All praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are enjoying and taking the blessings of the days of Dhul Hijjah, these blessed, full of khairat, these days full of goodness, alhamdulillah. And tomorrow is Arafat, is the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. And then, of course, Friday, 10th of Dhul Hijjah is Eid as well, alhamdulillah. Have you been, Ustaz? Alhamdulillah, United Eid. Have you been, Ustaz? Everything well?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, everything is going well. Been going well. Just, alhamdulillah, also just looking forward to a little break over the Eid period. Inshallah, spend some time with the family. Now that the restrictions are slightly different this time from what they were last Eid, alhamdulillah,
yes,
things have eased.
Alhamdulillah.
So all good, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Welcome to our viewers. Assalamu alaikum to everyone who's tuned in today. Thank you for joining us, for being a part of today's podcast on the topic which we have for you, which you should know is about marriage. We've entitled it, Are You Right For Me?
Yes.
So, Ustaz, let's get into this because people will be wondering what it's all about and what we're going to talk about and, the sort of angle we're going to take. So, Bismillah, over to you. Let's make a start.
Okay, alhamdulillah, salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Okay, the background to this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it permissible for us to marry some people and impermissible for us to marry others. So we don't have a situation where anyone can just marry anyone. That's the first thing we need to understand from an Islamic point of view. So there are, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions groups of people that are automatically impermissible to marry. Okay, so they are either blood related or related through being breastfed or related through marriage. So they're the three main categories. So them to one side, what we then have is a scenario is taking them to one side, then we say generally it's permissible for a Muslim to marry another Muslim. The ulama then have in the books mentioned, in light of prophetic narrations and guidance, that there are other things to consider when considering a marriage, especially on the part of the female. So when we look at a female, or there's a man who makes a proposal or is interested in marrying a female, there's various criteria and various things that need to be considered. I mean, you don't just someone comes and asks for your daughter's hand in marriage or your sister's hand in marriage and you say yes. Are you Muslim? I'm Muslim. Yes. Okay, here you go, you can have her. It's not as simple as that. There are things to consider and there are things to evaluate. The kind of background and most important point here is that marriage is designed to build society. It is designed to build families, and therefore steps have to be taken to ensure that the match is compatible and there's an equality of status between the potential bride and the groom. If there's a compatibility and equality of status, then there is a greater chance of the marriage being successful. There's a greater chance of the families coming together more successfully, and for society to be able to grow and prosper rather than break down and fragment like we find and see in our current situation.
So here to make it clear for our viewers, there's so many areas of marriage you can talk about prior to marriage, what to do, how to prepare. What we're looking at specifically today, and maybe elaborating on, is the area of compatibility, suitability, how one spouse fits with another in certain Sharia criteria, as well as generally in terms of their interests, in terms of their background, their education, which come under sort of their professions, their wealth, which I think the foundation for our discussions, or one of the foundations for our discussions, like you said, in light of the prophetic hadith, is the famous hadith, a well-known hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, a lady is married for four things, for four characteristics, if you like, for four elements. And then he mentioned her beauty, her wealth, her lineage, and then her deen, her religion. So I think it's these four things, and what is contained within it's not just as simple as these four things and that's it. I think there's a lot of discussion around that hadith, and then it does branch off into other hadith as well, of course, where the Prophet mentions certain people are suitable for others, certain people aren't, and how that works and how it all is part of finding someone who you can, like you said, have a successful bond with, the bond of marriage, to be a part of society in a productive way. What I would like to just talk about for very briefly is, when we have this conversation, and we're going to do this all of today, so I just want to mention this as before we get in there, is we talk about the two people.
Yes.
Him, her, him, etc. And we forget about the families of stars. I know we're going to talk about lineage, I know.
I mentioned
but we actually forget about the families, families, right? Like her brothers and sisters, his brothers and sisters, mom, dad, uncles, aunties. I'm just not just talking about the close family, I'm talking about the family, the khandan, as we say, right? The whole tabar, everyone, left, right, center. Bradri, so the brotherhood, the extended family, etc. And has an impact, and we'll be talking about this as well, because I think this is quite a hot topic, sensitive topic, difficult issue. I think some people find when families get involved, and uncles and cousins and aunties, and all of a sudden it's why is my life and my marriage the talk of the town almost, right? So we need to address these issues and hopefully go into them, inshallah ta'ala. So where would you start this convo? What point would you like to touch on first, Ustaz?
Sheikh, the first point I want to mention is that I suppose the question, whose choice is it?
Okay, good.
Whose choice is it to decide on who to marry? Now, I would say it is the choice of the individual looking to get married, with the guidance of their family members, especially the father, and in the absence of the father, the grandfather. I did a little survey on Instagram maybe a month or so ago, and I was saying sisters only to answer this question. And the question was, how many of you, or would you go out and buy an expensive car on your own without involving a male family member? And over 90% of the sisters that responded, there's a few brothers in there to spoil it a bit, but the most 90% of the sisters replied saying that they would not go out and buy an expensive car without the involvement of a male family member. And the reason I wanted to do that is so I could mention a specific point today, and the point is that it's your money. You're going to go and buy the car, and no one's going to make you buy a car that you don't like. It's going to be the car you want. You're going to like it. But that doesn't mean that you go and buy the first car that you see, because this male family member, they have more experience in that field. So they're going to advise you, don't buy this, It's got too much mileage on it. This is a bit old for you. This is going to be a bit heavy for you to steer. All of them are the things. So the majority of the sisters replied, and there were well over 100, maybe 100, 200. They were all saying basically that we wouldn't go and make this massive decision and spend all this money without the involvement of a male family member. Because the male family member there carries out the role of a someone who is looking after your best interests. And they should be seen as that. They should be seen as someone who is looking after your best interests. And when you have this person alongside you, and you accept them as someone who's looking after your best interest, they're going to protect you from much harm and protect you from loss, etc. Now, compare buying an expensive car, Sheikh, to getting married to somebody. Buying a car, fir bhi dunya ni cheez hai, right? It's your money, you're going to get it insured, whatever, and it's only material. But getting married to somebody, connecting yourself with somebody else, families connecting with families, this is one of the biggest decisions anyone's ever going to make in their life. And then to make that decision without the involvement of people who are going to be able to advise, it would be a massive, major mistake to make. So the idea, and people understand this, they understand this idea that, look, you don't make big decisions without consulting with people, right? Even I, as a male, will not go out and buy a car unless I've got my brother involved who actually buys and sells cars, or I've got another friend who is a mechanic, right? It works for Mercedes. So he knows his stuff regarding cars. I don't, this is our field. That's their field. So you always involve someone whose field it is, to ensure that you're not, you're getting a good deal and you're not going to be getting conned. And there's a lot of people out there who con people, right? So that's basically the idea. So whose decision is it? It's your decision as the person getting married ultimately, but with the support and influence, and direction and advice and guidance of the family members. Okay, it shouldn't just be one party or the other. It should be a combined, joint thing, because ultimately, as I mentioned, it's two individuals coming together and also two families coming together as well.
Yeah. So the first point we established is that it's the individual's decision, and ultimately it's their life they've got to live. And therefore they need to make the decision, yes or no, is this going to work? You know, and they will have to take advice on any decision in life, and especially on this decision. And I would like to add another thing in there. You did a very good survey there, Ustaz, because you know, when it comes to things in life, you do want advice. Even buying a mobile phone, people want advice, right? Simple thing. You know, when it comes to marriage though, and I speak from experience, when you've never been married, right, and you've never experienced this, you have zero idea. And I can say that because I was at that stage once. And I, having been married now for over 12, 13 years, coming up to 13 years in August, mashallah, I can tell you that what I've learned and what I've experienced, I can advise people, I can tell them, you know, it feels like you can say it with actual experience and confidence. But you can't say that before marriage. It just doesn't exist in the person. Which is they're mature, there's independent people, they've got their own living, they're grown up. So yeah, you are, you know, you could be 30, 40 years old and grown up. But if you haven't been through something and experienced it, and you don't know the ins and outs of it, then you must take the advice of other people. It's actually quite irresponsible, I would say, you know, and a negative thing to ignore the advice or shun or not even want to take the advice of those around you, especially those who would want your best interests, who would want the best for you. Yes, Ustaz?
Sheikh, you see, the thing here is a beautiful point you mentioned, but the issue here is now that when a person becomes emotionally attached to somebody else, then that, you know, if you call it love, blinds you. You think jo marzi ho jaye, main aise bande naal zindagi guzarni hai, right? And you're blinded in this. So what people have to do on a practical level is not get involved with somebody. When you're involved, you've already crossed that boundary and you've already gone too far. So the idea is that you, first of all, especially, you understand what your family dynamics are and what kind of person your parents want you to get married to, or what kind of person they feel will be right for you, right for your family, compatible, etc. And then you make sure that if they've allowed you to go out and find somebody in a halal manner, then it's done, but you know what kind of person is not acceptable and what kind of person is acceptable. So when they get emotionally attached, then there's a problem, because now they're not going to look, you know, they're going to be irresponsible, they're going to not think to reason, because now it's just a case of, no, I need to do this now. And especially when they've gone all the way with that person physically, then that's like, especially for women, that's a point of no return, because once they engage in kind of what husband and wife are only supposed to do, then it's like they've given themselves to that person fully. So they're thinking, you know what, I have to marry this person now, and this person has to marry me. We've done everything, that there's nothing left now. So these are the problems that people get themselves into, and one problem leads to another, you see. So this is the issue. So Sheikh, you want to mention something?
No, I was going to say that it's very important that we understand that, you know, at a young age, people are very emotionally driven on both sides, both men and women, and it's hard for them to see the long-term effects of decisions. You know, what does this mean for me personally, my life, my spouse's life, the family, the future, you know, and Islam wants us to think like that. It wants us to think of the longer journey and ultimately the end. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the hadith tells us that getting married completes half your faith, right? And it says fear Allah in the other half. People forget the second part. But it does say, you know, marriage is half of faith, or it completes half of your faith, etc. And what that tells us, what the meaning of the hadith is that if you're looking to get married, then it should be a marriage that builds your faith, that enhances your obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your journey to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, marriage is not just a decision for some kind of you know, satisfaction of life, of, you know, your desires, or just to say, you know, I'm married and trophy husband, trophy wife, or whatever. or look, I tick that box or something in life. Next stage. That's a non-religious idea. That's just worldly. And for a Muslim, marriage is not a worldly thing. Believe it or not, stars, marriage started in paradise, didn't it?
Good.
If you think about it.
Certainly did.
It didn't start on the earth. Marriage is a divine, a heavenly concept.
Yes.
It was Sayyidina Adam and Sayyidina Hawa alayhim assalam. They were married in paradise. They were husband and wife. Zawjuka uskun anta wa zawjuka al-jannah. You don't go to paradise alone. What good is there to be alone? Paradise, you need a spouse. You need a zawj, a partner. Yes.
No, look, there's a joke, isn't there? That why didn't the skeleton go to the party? Yeah.
Because there's nobody to go with.
And nobody to go with. So everybody wants somebody, to go with. Yeah. So here they have, one spouse has other spouse. It's a beautiful point you're making, mashallah.
Yeah, we complete. Each spouse completes each other.
Yeah.
We all got weaknesses. We're not perfect, but it helps you to get rid of some of those weaknesses and build some strength in your iman, in your journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in your worship. And this is the kind of foundation that often is just totally ignored.
Yes.
In marriages today. It becomes totally about the outer, the sensory, the kind of worldly aspect, as we're mentioning, and like just to look good at the end of the day, right? We could talk about marriages and how people have to get Lamborghinis and all sorts, but that's not our topic today. I'm thinking, the whole concept is about that though, and that's the goal at the end of it. Sorry, go ahead.
Sheikh, so here I asked a question again on Instagram, right? Because I like to see what people are thinking. I'd like to know.
So you're quite active on Instagram, Ustaz. I've noticed.
I'm doing a live at the moment while we're here. I've got my phone.
Okay, so you're live on Instagram.
I'm live on Instagram right now.
Assalamu alaikum to everyone on Instagram. Can they see me?
They can't see you. They can see me from a side shot. But I'm going to mention that the link to this particular YouTube live is on my bio, in my bio. So they can go to my bio on Instagram. They can click that. And that will bring them to the YouTube.
And what I'd like to say, sorry, before you mention your point, what I'd like to say is, please, for our viewers, welcome once again, those of you joining us during this live stream, this podcast. Please get involved. Please drop a message, ask a question. If you take us on a different angle to what we've got planned, we actually want to engage with you and answer your questions, because sometimes what we've got planned is very linear, it's very.
This is quite a relaxed topic as well. It's quite a relaxed and open topic. We don't know what you're thinking.
But really, what matters is what people want to know at the end of the day. You've got certain questions. Now, don't be shy. Throw in a question for your friend or your family member. Even if you're married, please, if you have anything to share, to suggest, to ask, please do. Please do. Get involved. It's interactive. It's for everyone. Inshallah ta'ala. But back to you, Stars. You're gonna go into a point there.
So here the point was, the question I asked was, there's a man and woman, and they're engaged in sexual relations with each other. They're not married, and should they get the nikah done to make things halal or not? It's not as simple as that. So there were two options. One is they should have the nikah to make things halal, and the second option was it's not as simple as that, right? And I put the answers like that for a specific reason. Most people were saying yes, they should go and have the nikah done to make it halal. But marriage isn't just to make sex halal, is it? It's not just to make that halal. There's much more involved in marriage, right? So it's not just going to say, go and do a secret nikah now, or go, have a secret marriage just so that you can have a halal sexual relationship, right? The idea is that there's much more involved in marriage than just that. And that's the solution to a problem like that. And it is a problem, isn't just getting married, right? Because then getting married means you're with this person for the rest of your life, and there's so many issues involved. And this is what we're kind of discussing today. So, Sheikh, I'd like to mention the hadith, if I may.
Go ahead, Bismillah.
So here, this is kind of advice to parents, but also for their children to think about as well. So the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned in a narration that if one whose religion and moral character, so two things mentioned, if one whose religion and moral character are acceptable to you, so someone comes to you and their moral character and their religion is acceptable to you, comes to you as a suitor, right? Then give in marriage, meaning give your daughter in marriage, and unless you do, it would lead to affliction and great mischief on the earth.
Salam.
And this hadith is in Sunan Tirmidhi Sharif, hadith 1084. So I've got two hadiths marked in Tirmidhi Sharif. There's another hadith I want to mention later, inshallah, another two hadiths. This particular hadith, all I want to mention is that this is advice to parents. You have some parents, they say, we're going to discuss compatibility, etc. But the issue you've got here is sometimes parents don't even know what compatibility is and it isn't.
Yeah.
They say, no. These lot are not at our level. But what we really need to look at is, what does Sharia have as criteria of what is on your level or not on your level? Yeah. So on one hand, should individuals be allowed to marry whoever without considering suitability? No. Should parents use suitability as a stick to say, look, they're not suitable for you? Or should we look at what is the suitability criteria and see whether the parents are being reasonable or unreasonable by not allowing someone to get married, for example? So, when people come to us and say, oh, my mom and dad will not allow me to get married to the person I want to get married to, the first thing we ask is, look, what is the person, what are their objections, right? What are the objections that they have? Oh, well, he's got a different caste and he's got this and he's got this. So then we look at these objections and think, are these valid objections from a Sharia point of view? If they're valid objections, then they have every right to object, and you need to back down a bit. And if they're not valid objections, then they need to back down a bit, right? So we're like in the middle, trying to strike the balance between people and make sure that their criteria is not an egocentric criteria, but rather it is a Sharia-based criteria.
I think this is very important to help both sides, because often parents want the best for their children. I believe that, and we should not doubt that. But often they don't know, like you said, so we need to help educate them and support them and get them to figure out, look, this is what you kind of need to help support your child in making a decision and not take over the decision. And at the same time, we need to help the younger generation to understand that, look, there has to be an involvement from parents, and there has to be a guidance, but it's not to take over, it's not to burden you or force you, it's to support you and to find that ultimate decision. So I've got a question come in here. Let's take this, because I think it's very relevant.
Yeah, of course.
And he was going to come anyway. I think it's part of what we were going to discuss. But he says, it mentions a particular caste. I'm not going to mention the caste, not to go down that particular road. But I'm a particular caste, there's different castes, whatever, right? And my parents are not willing to consider anyone outside of our caste. How can I reason with them? Their reasoning is, we have to marry someone who has the same family values as us, and anybody outside of the caste will not understand that and not be suitable for you. So it's a big question, Stars. I think.
So is this a male or a female asking the question?
This is a female asking the question.
Okay. Jazakallah Sheikh. So the question here about caste now, what we need to do is say, right, we need to say, is caste a criteria that we consider from an Islamic point of view when we're looking at compatibility? So the first thing is, compatibility is considered Islamically. There is a legal case for compatibility. And our big books of fiqh, etc., they mention that it is compatibility, kafa'a, what we call the compatibility, suitability, is legally acknowledged and it is legally considered. Now, when it comes to caste, does caste form one of the criteria? And if I mention what the 4 criteria are, one is religion, and Aqidah comes into that. And we're going to discuss the Aqidah as well, because that's an interesting one. Lineage comes into it, financial standing comes into this, and occupation comes into this. Now, does caste fit into religion? No. Does it fit into Aqidah? No. Does it fit into lineage? It could, potentially. Does it fit into financial standing? It could, potentially. And does it fit into occupation? It could, potentially, right? Now, there was a time where the caste of the individual did denote their financial standing. There was a time where their caste did denote their occupation, because these castes were based on occupations that people used to have. Occupations, right? So, someone's a mochi because he's a shoemaker, right? Someone's something else, lohar, someone's this, someone's that. Whatever occupation that they did was basically the caste that they were part of. Now, myself being Pakistani, right, and yourself as well, so we understand the Pakistani culture, and we understand, alhamdulillah, to the best of what Allah
similar
has
in the Indian culture, Bangladeshi culture,
Hindus, similar things.
Parts of Africa. It's around the world, but it's not every culture. But there is a big caste issue or case for many cultures around the world.
Yeah. So here now, what I would say to this individual, or rather than the family, this is why we need to, if they're not English speaking parents, this is why they need to get the parents listen to us on here, and we need to speak some Urdu and Punjabi for them to make them understand. But is caste an issue right now? I've thought about this over the years and keep coming back and considering it, etc. I think there was a time where caste was a criteria which would come under compatibility, but right now I don't think that is the case at all. Because if this is a man and a woman, and they're both accountants, for example, and they both work in the same office, and they've worked together, and now they think we might be interested in getting married to each other. Okay, so now she is whatever caste she is, and he is whatever caste he is. But look at his occupation now. Don't look at what caste he is from, which denotes the occupation of his great grandfather that he had when he was back home in Pakistan or India, right? Because that caste then does not have any bearing on his occupation now. He's an accountant. On his financial standing now, he's got a well-paid job, right? So when parents now use the caste, I don't think caste is a valid reason, and it doesn't fall under any of the Islamic criteria.
You said earlier, could caste be a part of one's lineage? So in terms of lineage, you said it's something recognized under Islamic law as a part of suitability. So could you maybe explain the lineage side and see if that kind of affects the caste system as well or not? Or is it something different?
Yeah, from what I understand, in terms of the lineage, you've got, for example, the ulama mention in the books that a Qurayshi, someone who's from the Qurayshi tribe, is compatible in terms of status with other Qurayshis, right? Whether they're from Banu Hashim or not from the Banu Hashim. We call the Sadat that we have as well.
Yeah.
Anything an Arab is in equality of status with other Arabs. Yeah. So we have that. So there is that kind of thing where it could be, there are some scholars will say that a Sayyid can only marry a Sayyid because they're from the descendants of the Banu Hashim and the Sadat, etc., etc. So there could be that, right? And that could be classed as a valid objection, that a Sayyid would have to marry a Sayyid. The interesting thing here is, though, that even if there was a Sayyida, a female who was a descendant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is an argument to say that she can only marry a Sayyid. Yeah.
Yes.
But
that's clear. Many scholars have said that.
But many scholars have said that. But if the man was a scholar, due to the nobility of being a scholar and due to the honor that he has of being a scholar, the scholar could marry this lady who is a Sayyida.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, because of him being a scholar, the ulama mentioned that there's no one who is above a scholar in terms of compatibility. There's no woman out there basically that a scholar could not marry and he could not be equal of status with. He's not less than anybody. Why? Because he is an inheritor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and because he is an inheritor and an heir of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that gives him that social standing and that high rank in that regard as well.
So on that same point of lineage then and families, often parents, they want their child to get married from back home, whether that's Bangladesh or Afghanistan or Somalia or Pakistan, etc. Right? And based on what you've said, Ustaz, I'm extrapolating something here right now. Your own cousin isn't the same as you then, is she? Because she's got a different socioeconomic background, or he, if it's a he, right, the other way around. And they've got different levels of living and standards. You might not have met them. They live in a different style of living. They could be totally worlds apart. They might have even be poorer than you in terms of wealth. They might have different occupations because you've migrated to the country and taken a whole new lifestyle, you might have businesses and be very wealthy. They might be doing some, labor work and this. We're not talking about better and worse. We're talking about your compatibility and suitability. And even your own family relatives, you share the same lineage and blood, but you don't actually share the same interests. You don't actually share the same views on life, same kind of environment, everyday kind of expectations on things. So is there a compatibility between cousins who live thousands of miles apart or not?
Sheikh, that there's two things here. It's a very good point you've made. It's the two things. We look at the, like for example, let's say the lady here and her parents are saying, we want you to marry your cousin.
By the way, in Islam, you can marry your first cousins.
You can marry your first cousin. You can marry your first cousin. And the thing here is that if there was a lady here and her parents were saying, we want you to marry your first cousin. Now, as far as this kafa'a is concerned and equality of status, we're going to discuss that as part of this point that you've just mentioned. But it's up to her if she wants to marry him or not. Now, she can think that, well, hold on, he's from there, he's from a different environment, different mindset. And a lot of women here have problems with the guys that they get married to from Pakistan, cousins, because there's so many things, Sheikh, right? Because she'll have a better job than him here. He might be working in a takeaway, being a taxi driver, and there's nothing wrong with them jobs, but that's the reality of the situation. Language barrier, mentality. Then the guys don't come here, and he's not going to be. Many guys I know of, Sheikh, right? We speak from experience that many of them neglect their family here. They don't spend money on their family members, the children or the wives. They save money up to send it back home because they want to build a house back home, or they need to get their sisters married back home, or they need to get their brothers married back home, or they need to show people back home that I've gone there and I've made it. Yeah. So there's so many issues. So many issues.
Yeah.
With regards to, so would I advise someone, a lady from here, to get married from? I said, look, the choice is yours, but I think it's better for someone who's born and bred in England to marry someone who's born and bred in England, whether that's a male or a female, because I think there is a more compatibility in that sense. With regards to this compatibility, what we're talking about from an Islamic point of view, the kafa'a, this is only where, for example, if the father of the girl feels that marrying his daughter to this guy will mean some form of zilla and dishonoring, and it will have a negative. What's the word I want to use now? There will be a I wouldn't say backlash in the community, but they will have to. If I give an example,
go ahead.
So like for example, if there was someone of the wrong, a bad akida, and now if someone asks, a bad akida person comes, let's say there's a Shia person, right? So a Shia comes to a Sunni and says, I want your daughter's hand in marriage, and he says, no, I'm not giving it, because log aksan Shian ki teach did this. People would say, look, he's giving his daughter to a Shia girl, would he rather, look what he's just gone and done, he's just gone and thrown her to the sheep to the wolves, basically, right? And now her akida's gone, her beliefs have gone, and her following her generations have gone off track now because she's going to marry someone with the wrong akida. So basically, if the father is happy with the rishta, then there's no issue of compatibility. So if the father says that, look, I'm happy for my daughter to marry someone in Pakistan, even though he's from the village and she's from the city, even though they are poorer than when we are, etc., etc. There might be 100 reasons that there isn't quite a compatibility, but the compatibility is only an issue if it causes an issue for the parents.
So this sounds very linear, very sort of direct. Going back to another point that's linked to this, we're talking about family relations. You said that obviously the Sadat, which we're talking about, the family of the Prophet ﷺ, have a certain rank and status, and many scholars have said that they should be married to somebody who's of their status. But are there not other lineages recognized in Islam, or is it just that one, or how does that work? So let's say let's leave the Sadat out of it. Let's just talk about, let's say, Muslims in Africa or Southern Asia. Do they have lineages amongst themselves? One's higher than the other, or compatibility between lineages, or how does that work? Families,
Sheikh, the thing is, that there is in every culture that is this aspect, right?
But I'm not talking about professions like you mentioned earlier, because sometimes it's based on profession. I'm just talking genuinely about some. So remember, there was royalty in those parts of the world, right? So some people say, we're from so and so, we were kings of our time, Some people are of like courtiers, and some people of like they were famous. Let's say so they have lineages in the sense of they have great people in their past they take pride and honor from.
They do.
Does that increase? Does that mean they have a higher social status and compatibility? Islamically speaking, or just culturally speaking, because we've got to define culture or separate culture from Islam.
You see, Sheikh, when we talk about lineage in that sense, we talk about in one sense, we're going to talk about and touch on with regards to someone who accepts Islam, a revert to Islam, lineage we consider in that sense as well. Okay, we will touch on that particular point. But like here, for example, we would say that, let's say in this country you have working class people, you have middle class people, and you have upper class people, so that's the kind of class system that they have here. You have working, middle, and upper. So most people here, they're working class, aren't they? Even working / middle class, And now, for example, for example, the Queen and her grandsons, etc. They didn't used to like their men marrying someone who was non-aristocrat and non-upper class, etc. It's the whole kind of thing. So here, I don't know about Africa and other places, or I know obviously situation like in Pakistan with the Brazils and everything, but if we say here in the UK, most people are working class people. The majority are working class people. So I struggle to see how there is a difference in status in this culture that we are in, when everybody's about on par with each other.
Okay, I get your point. Just to
And the other
touch on
thing
another
is,
point. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go.
So on the
Go for it.
point on the scholar, where you said the scholar is suitable for a lady from the Sadat. What about kind of implies? I'm just taking this like I said from what you said, that a female scholar, nobody's worthy of marrying her apart from a male scholar. Then, right? I mean, who's equal to a female scholar then?
No, but there are other things that can be considered. You see, so if there's a female scholar, then again, compatibility. It might be that she's compatible with the male scholar. You're right. That might not be a bad choice.
No, I'm saying is like a female scholar. Is she going to marry an everyday guy? Is that okay? If her parents are okay with that.
If her parents are okay with it, then she can.
If she's okay with it,
if she's okay and her parents are okay, it's fine. It's always but if what we need to look at is there going to be in society? This is why it's important that the people who discuss these things have to be aware of the society and the culture and have an understanding of what people feel, how people see things, what people see as good, what people see as bad. Now, would it be objectionable for a father to marry his daughter who is a scholar to a man who is a non-scholar? Would it be objectionable? Would people in society think, in our culture of today, would people think, oh look, he's got his daughter who is a scholar married to a man who works, I don't know, does a job and is a solicitor, for example? Would that be an issue? It wouldn't.
Not in my understanding.
Even if he was a working class kind of guy, if he was a working class guy, let's say even if he was a taxi driver, for example, right? There are sisters out there who, mashallah, have studied, and then they've gone and got married to, the sister who I know is a Hafiza. She's done an Alima course as well, and she went to Pakistan and got married to her cousin brother, right? So does society see a female scholar going and marrying someone from back home or from here who's working class kind of person and look down upon that? No. Is it going to be a means of any kind of worry or having to take some abuse from the community or kind of be looked down upon from the community? No, it's not going to be the case.
On that point, you just mentioned obviously this sister, whoever she is, she's studied, etc. So from that perspective, I don't want to go into the question of what is a scholar necessarily, but like you got your local Maulana, your Imam, your teacher. Are these people who we're referring to as scholars can marry other people who may have certain criteria, but because of the scholarship they're equal? Or we're talking about the Shaykh al-Islam scholar who sits on the top of the podium, whatever. I don't know, these big scholars, let's say. What do you mean by scholarship then?
Sheikh, when you talk about school, this is another topic, right? Inshallah, for another day.
It is slightly, it is.
My understanding, I've been studying for 8 years now, since 2012. Real scholarship has been lost, right? The real scholarship, I feel, has been lost, especially in the country we're living in. And what you would call your local Maulana, your local Imam, your local scholar, we call them scholars because they sit with the scholars, but that's not what a real scholar is. There are levels.
There are levels, okay.
There are levels. And what we mean by like a scholar is a scholar, not someone who just studied a watered down version of a Darsi Nizami 3-year part-time course, 4-year part-time course, 5-year part-time course in Islam. They've had a graduation, a bachelor's degree, alim, alima, not
certificate.
Not the kind of courses we have. Look, if they used to study 10 years back in Pakistan, for example, they used to study 10 years full-time. Then part-time, that should be at least 20 years.
Well, maybe more, because you think full-time is 5 days a week, 6
days
a week.
You're living there.
Part-time once a week, you need about 50 years to
exactly. So then how can you become an alim or an alima in 3 years?
Yeah, exactly.
How does that work?
Courses.
But the thing
so
is,
basically, these are pathway to scholarship. These are making people into serious students of knowledge.
Sheikh, most of the courses
devote their life and time.
Yeah, most courses don't sell it like that. They sell it as alima course, and you'll know the people come out of it saying, "Main alim bani gaya." I'm an alima, I've done an alima course. You might not know A from B, but you're still, this is the kind of the idea that they give.
And the reason why I mentioned this to stars, the reason why I mentioned this to stars is because we don't want the lady folk out to think that the Maulanas somehow become the best option in society because they're the scholars. No, it's not like that.
No, I think, Sheikh, I think
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think when
sisters,
we look,
I don't want sisters look for scholar on the CV now, right? That's not necessarily the case.
I think the good thing is you have to look for someone who is righteous and God-fearing.
Yes.
Yeah, and even if the person isn't a scholar, i.e. a high level scholar, but if he is a learned, knowledgeable person, and if he is learning and teaching and recognizes being a learned and knowledgeable person, then innama yakhsha Allah min ibadihi al-ulama, that indeed only the people of knowledge are those who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in that
on
sense,
that point, Ustaz, I remember when I was with a brother, we were on Hajj, and we were talking about another brother. It was a beautiful, it was a good conversation, and the brother I was talking to mentioned the background of that person, etc. And he mentioned the caste of the brother. I never heard of the caste, to be honest. And he said that people look down on his caste and stuff like that. But I was like, no, look how great a brother he is. And this brother was a teacher as well. And he said, that's right. You'd marry your daughter to this brother, right? You'd marry anybody would be honored to have their daughter married to this brother because of his
good character,
because of his he was generous, he was caring, he was thoughtful for all the hajis. He was like the best haji we had on the group. Like, wow, his lineage didn't matter. His Islamic knowledge was sound. I mean, he wasn't a scholar or anything, but he accompanied the scholars for a lot. He served the scholars, but he was just full of love and kindness and the prophetic character. And you see, Ustaz, I think that is the peak of what you want in any spouse, whether it's male for female, female for male. And I think that we can get caught up in the lineage, the job. These are things which help, the compatibility, add to it. I think really, I mean, let's move on to the converts when you said you want to touch on that. So a convert to Islam, this is a serious issue. A young lady, she's whole family are Muslim, generations of Muslims, they converted somewhere back a few hundred years ago. But now a new Muslim, right? He's just embraced Islam several months ago. And he's looking to get married, comes obviously, and it could be to anyone, not necessarily any particular culture, but it could be any Muslim country from anywhere around the world, Arab, African, Asian, and proposes to her through her family, etc. He keeps it all genuine and proper. But what happens now, Stars? What's going on here? What do we do? How does it work?
So you've got a lady who's a born Muslim. Her father is a Muslim. Her grandfather is a Muslim. Yeah. So she's Muslim. Her father's Muslim, born Muslim, and her grandfather's a born Muslim.
Yeah.
Now, if a person comes along and he's a revert, meaning his father wasn't a Muslim, he's accepted Islam. Yes. Now, if the father agrees for his daughter to marry this individual, then there's no issue whatsoever. During any of these things that we're mentioning today, if she's okay with it and the father is okay with it, then it's fine. You can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
But the father is basically saying there's no issue for me. There's no issue in the community. I'm not gonna face any backlash from the community. There's no issue whatsoever, right? I'm happy to give my daughter away. That's the issue. The thing is that if now someone comes along and he's a revert and he wants to marry this lady, if the father objects to this, look, if he doesn't object, it's fine, isn't it? I know people who reverts who are married, ladies who are born Muslims, and they're reverts. And their fathers have been okay with the rishta, and they've given the rishta, and everything's fine and good, right? I know people like that.
Yeah, okay.
So the issue is, what if the father objects and says, no, I don't want my daughter marrying someone who's a revert? Does he have Islamic grounds to object? Somebody might say, oh, well, he's a Muslim, that's all that matters. It's not all that matters. It is essential that he's Muslim, of course, because she can't marry a non-Muslim. But is this the only thing that we're going to consider? No, the father has grounds to object to his daughter marrying a person who is a new Muslim.
Okay, what grounds? I think we need to clarify that. What grounds, Ustaz?
The grounds,
because I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
The grounds are, is this why you invited me on today?
No, not necessarily. Just generally. You may quote books as well, Ustaz, because I've read the books as well.
Right. Yes,
and
you
I
have,
don't agree with the books either.
That's mashallah. This is a mercy for the listeners and the viewers then.
And I'll explain my reasoning, but we need to get to that point first.
Okay. So basically now, what will happen is, if the father objects, he has every right to object. Object on what basis? The fact that this individual is not a born Muslim. That in itself is ground, okay? And the books of the jurists, support that. Now, what are some of the wisdoms? Should I mention some of the wisdom, or do you want to counter?
Go ahead.
Okay. So here we'll have to pull out Munazara Rashidiya, won't we, and look at the conditions and everything. So basically, Now, look, when a person, Sheikh, has come into Islam newly, you mentioned he might have accepted Islam a few months ago. You know, this brother, he needs to spend a couple of years rooting himself and getting strong in his deen and faith, because changing religion is a massive thing. And now changing religion is such a massive thing, and on top of that, you're going to get married, and that's going to be another massive thing in your life. So, you know, I know people who, they'll accept Islam and they think, right, I've accepted Islam, and the next thing I need to do is find a good Muslim wife and get married and settle down. It just overwhelms them so much. And I know of people who've gone and got married, and then within a week they've gone and let the woman go. Yeah. And oh, bro, I didn't know what I was doing. I've just accepted Islam newly, akhi, you know, all of this business, right? So what I think needs to happen is, first, the guy needs to ground himself firmly in the deen. The other thing is that the reverts, not saying anything bad about them, but they have family. They have, you know, relatives and family, and their way of life, 20, 30, 40 years, this way of life that they've lived, the thing they've eaten, the routines that they've had, the things that they see as right and wrong. And there is a likelihood now, how great or small depends on the individual, but there's a likelihood that this individual could go back to the religion of his forefathers, which leaves his wife in limbo. Because if he leaves Islam and goes back to his old religion, that nikah breaks straight away, because she cannot be married to a non-Muslim. So if he leaves Christianity to accept Islam, accepts Islam and then goes back to Christianity, the nikah is broken. And she might be, remember there's a case in Dewsbury where there was a brother who was married, and he had a few kids, and he'd married to a Muslim lady, who was a revert. And then basically he was saying, look, you've got half an hour to answer XYZ question, otherwise I'm going to leave Islam, right? So you have that. So there is a likelihood of them. And the other thing is that they're not well versed or well grounded in the deen, and they're going to be the head of the household. And and then all the other thing is that, does ethnicity play a part in this, right? Because the chances are that the person who is a revert coming to us, let's say a Pakistani lady, and the revert coming to ask for the rishta of the Pakistani lady, is very, very unlikely for him to be Pakistani, right? If he's living here, chances are he's going to be, you know, English background, right, etc., right? Anglo-Saxon, call it whatever you want. So now, is that going to create a stigma for the family in society, that they're, you know, I'm not being racist here, but I'm saying, is there an issue in society where we're going to say, this, my daughter's married a white person, for example? Is that going to be a stigma for that family? If the father feels it is a stigma for him, yes, he has grounds to refuse. Not based on his ethnicity, but based on...
on a lot of what you're saying, it seems like the father's getting married more than the daughter.
No,
it's about him. Like, if he's not happy, if he's not his family, you know, his this, his that.
If that marriage doesn't work out, Sheikh,
you know, it's him basically. What's going on here? It's like,
let me ask you a question with respect here. Let me ask you a question. Do you know, if that marriage doesn't work out, who's left to pick up the pieces?
Her family, father and mother and brothers and sisters.
That, I rest my case then.
Okay, fine, Ustaz. I do agree with a lot of what you've said. Don't worry, I'm not going to start refuting rebuttals and debates.
No, I'm not worried at all.
A lot of what you said was based on a new Muslim, right? And you know what we read in the books is based on a time where, believe it or not, Muslims and non-Muslims are very hostile towards each other. Even non-Muslims are very hostile. It's a massive hostility over the years. You know, people, obviously there wasn't much communication and exposure to each other's cultures and all that, right? So there was a lot of hostility and wars, and you know, that's why we got history full of wars, basically. And what happened was, a new Muslim was, it was a question of, you know, is this a genuine new Muslim? We've got to give him time, etc. So without a doubt, you need to do that. Even now, I'm not saying it's changed that all of a sudden this Muslim, next day you can say, right, marry, you know, make him imam of the masjid, whatever, you know. But what it means, but it's different today. We know people study Islam for years before they become Muslims or stars. So as much as they might be new to Islam, they might know more than the lady they're marrying. I'm not saying this is always the situation, but it's not the same as before, where generally, yes, they were very new to Islam, whether it's male or female, they didn't know much. And, you know, sometimes there were false conversions just for the sake of convenience, etc. In this world, but the people I see around me, a lot of the converts are people who've studied Islam, people who've been through a struggle, you know, to find their faith. And when they come to Islam, they actually become very strong Muslims. And you said earlier, scholars are match for anyone. Many ulama now are converts to Islam. Some of your colleagues are converts to Islam that have become very well versed teachers and inspirations and role models for the community. And they have married, and some of them have married born Muslims, and nobody's objected. That's only increased them in honor. And they're honored to have that person in their family. There's no stigma around it, is there? So what I'm saying, Ustaz, is I don't think the concept of a revert and his father not being a Muslim has anything to do with it anymore. It's more a case of the person himself, regardless of his father and mother and his their religion and so forth, is the person. Because some people, honestly, Ustaz, they're brought up in the royal family. They're brought up with high morals, high character, better than some born Muslims in terms of their cultural respect for the community, for their etiquettes and so forth. If that person were to become a Muslim and believe in Islam and become firm and then become learned in the deen, and many of these people I've seen, they're very learned in the deen. When they come into Islam, write books on Islam, and I've read some of their books. I'm quite amazed at the works that have been produced by this generation of people, this category of people. So I feel as though they actually how could we say a positive introduction, a positive aspect to our Muslim community in the UK. And I think they're on par, if not ahead, to be honest. Of course, it comes back to the type of person. I'm not saying everyone in that category, just like I'm not saying every single born Muslim is an angel, right? So I don't think the fact that the father of this man is not a Muslim is an objectionable issue for the father of the lady anymore. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you should go and marry him or not marry him. That's another topic. That's down to the details of the character, etc. But I'm saying just to use that, saying he's not a born Muslim, you're a born Muslim, it's objectionable. I don't think that is relevant today anymore because of the context of that ruling in the past. It's not a prophetic hadith that says that. It's not a statement of the Prophet or the Sahaba. They said, oh, he's not a born Muslim. This was something derived from the hadith in terms of compatibility in a particular time and age. And I'm not saying you can go marry him or not marry him or her. I'm just saying that I don't think we should use that as a criterion anymore for the relationship between two individuals, whether they should get married or not, because he could be the same culture. He could. I know you're saying that it's most likely the person's going to be from a different culture to the lady. Could be an Arab lady and Afro-Caribbean brother. Like, we're not trying to be here racist or trying to single out particular ethnicities. We're saying the combinations can be many. And this could be a very respectable family whose Islam goes back really far. Brand new Muslim here. What do? I say you judge the person according to what you see. You have to make a decision on what you feel is comfortable. And yes, the father will have a big say in that. I'm not trying to take him out of the equation. I was saying earlier. What I'm saying is, like, we need to assess things more on the. It goes back to your point of stars. Like, we've taken away this idea of caste, and I agree with you on that one. I think that caste was something probably very relevant in those parts of the world, and maybe even still is. I think certain levels, because it does affect the way you behave in life, the way you interact, the expectancies, the way you're going to behave in the family home when you move to the lady, or the way you're going to interact with in-laws. Families have to, and again the cultural kind of setting that we're married to that family. There is a kind of stigma that may surround some of those decisions, whichever way they are. But I don't think that is here in the UK. You're right. I think that that's something that some of our elders do hold on to. But what I see yourself, what a lot of our viewers probably feel the same, is that is not the case. He's a Muslim, I'm a Muslim. Well, I can't get married to him. He's a nice brother. He's practicing just because he's of a particular type of category of caste, etc. I don't see it. Exactly. So similarly for a convert, I feel a very similar kind of aspect that we need to not say that oh, he's not a born Muslim, so there's that in itself is a reason to reject. That's what I'm saying, Ustaz. You get my point?
I 100% get your point, and it's a valid point. But I would like to make an additional point to that. Yeah.
Bismillah, go ahead.
Just to give us a fuller kind of picture, because we all speak from experience, don't we? Yeah.
Yes, now, we do. Yeah.
I know that there is an increase, and naturally there would be. Initially when, like, my grandfather came to this country to work. Yeah. And my father came to this country when he was 12. I was speaking to my mother the other day, and she was saying that initially the men came over and the women they left in Pakistan because they felt that this country was not right for the girls. It wasn't right for the females. And no one ever intended to stay here forever. It was supposed to be a short-term economic migration, come here, earn some money and go back home, basically, right? That was everybody. No one expected to settle here. But then when things changed and they did settle here, and then they started calling their daughters over and family getting together here. I now know that there are, you know, this what we're saying, you're basically saying is that ruling was right for a specific time, but it doesn't apply here in that same way. I still think it does, and I'll tell you why. Because there's an increased number, people contact me directly and people I know of, increased number of sisters who are Muslimas meeting non-Muslim men and then wanting to marry them, and then them men converting to get married.
Totally agree with you, Ustaz.
Converting to get married. There was a guy, and basically I know personally, he's a Hindu, and he wanted to get married to a Muslim girl, and so he's read the kalima, they've done the nikah, and then my brother said to this guy, do you believe in Islam then? And he goes, do I hell? He goes, I only did it to get married to her. Her parents wouldn't agree otherwise. Right? Wow. So now the nikah is broken. Somebody else came to me 2 years ago and they said, they invited me around to the nikah. They said, as a Muslim lady, non-Muslim man, and they said, will you, we'd like to invite you to our nikah. I said to the man, I said, I didn't know you were a Muslim. He goes, I'm not. He says, I'm not. I said, well, how are you going to marry her when you're not a Muslim? Oh, well, she goes, oh, well, we're working on it at the moment. You see, we're just working on things, and he'll get there eventually. See what I mean? So what's happening is that the woman is being attracted to this non-Muslim man because of his lifestyle. And then in order to get her family to accept, he's going to read the Shahada, whether he believes or not, Allah Almighty knows best. But I said to him, look, if you're going to become a Muslim, then fine, I will come to the nikah. But if you're not going to, if you're going to pretend to be a Muslim, then I can't have any part of that. And you're defrauding your families and defrauding yourselves. Now, what's happened is he's accepting Islam, but they're living his lifestyle, not the Islamic lifestyle, not Muslim lifestyle, because the influence is coming from her, and what influence is she's going to have when she's already been dating him for 3 or 4 years. So the problem we have here is you've got women who are Muslims marrying men who are non-Muslim, or non-Muslims willing to read the Shahada in order to get the transaction done, but ending up in marriages where they're married to, well, not even married, because the marriage does no longer exist when the person is no longer Muslim, or the fact that he pretended to be a Muslim, but in reality he wasn't a Muslim, and there was no nikah there in the first place. Like what happened in India, Pakistan, the Sikhs. There were many Sikhs who pretended to become Muslims, and the Hindus who pretended to become Muslims to marry the Muslim women. And that's why our ulama introduced the first kalima, second kalima, sixth kalima, even.
Exactly.
Well, kalima paro, and prove
if you don't know them, how do we know you're Muslim?
If you don't know the sixth kalima, how are you Muslim, basically? So I still think
we'd all be struggling today.
I take your point on board, but I still think there is that. But ultimately, what does it come down to?
I agree with you, Stars. Look, if you pose a question right now, would you give your daughter, your sister, and even the ladies, the questions to them, the mothers, the sisters, would you give your younger sister, your sibling? I mean, nobody would agree to that, and I'm sure that's a straightforward answer. But that's not my point, Stars. My point is that just because a person's father, mother are not Muslims is not a reason to judge them. As for the exact person, then of course you have to look into their background. They've embraced Islam recently, only seem to be embracing Islam to get married. Sometimes we see these things. I totally agree with you. That situation, we can't take a rule from that. The rule we can take is be cautious, be careful, but not because he's a convert or trying to be a convert to get married. We're going to treat all converts like that. Of course, we're not. Converts that we know converts that are our teachers, that are our colleagues, that we are influencing us and the Muslim community more than born Muslims, right? We know converts that are hardworking in their communities, authoring books, fundraising. They're doing all sorts of great work. They're actually doing a lot. Islam.
No, I totally agree with you.
Da'wah in much greater ways than born Muslims, whatever background they're from in this country. So that person is an amazing person. We can't have the same rule for him and the same rule for any. It's not a rule. I'm saying to take that rule out now because it doesn't apply in a general way. It may have done in the past. It doesn't apply now. You look at that person. Well, wait a minute. Like you said, all these scenarios are people just coming into Islam. I agree with you. Somebody who's new to Islam and doesn't have any background in Islamic learning, exposure, is just basically love, right? That's why Islam is, even for the lady, by this works both ways for me. When you have the lady that the guy wants to get married to her, obviously we should mention Christians and Jews is fine, but she's a Hindu, she's a atheist, whatever, right? Sikh or a Buddhist or whatever, any religion. A Muslim can't get married to her, Muslim male man, unless she converts. Now she could do the same thing, right? And it could be objectionable to the parents, it could be objectionable to the family, that look, we don't know her iman yet. We're not sure about it. She's just doing it to please you and please us. So I think that's a very unique situation, which we can't really say, look, because she's a convert or he's a convert, then we're not going to do it, etc. I think there is a level of he's not really a practicing Muslim and he's new to Islam. So not practicing, new to Islam. So I don't think it's good to marry him yet. Let him have 3-4 years in Islam. You can wait 3-4 years, my daughter, my brother, whatever, my son. And then we'll think about this person. Let them establish their iman. Let them practice. If they're willing, and if they're willing to fake it for 4 years, let them be, right? What can you do, right? But if they're going to do that for 3-4 years, Bismillah. So I think I agree with you, Stars. We shouldn't do that. It's wrong. But that's not because he's a convert. That's because there's the lovey-dovey things going on. This is going on in social media. Born Muslims meet on social media. They get to know each other, get married, convince our parents, and then all of a sudden it kicks off and they separate because it was just, passion. It wasn't. It was whims and desires. It's based on. So I think that's a different scenario for me. Stars, let's go to some questions.
Yes, please.
Because I think we did ask our viewers to give us a few comments and input. It says here, parents often use their status as parents as a battering ram to make their children submit, strong words, to any decision as they make. Also, parents don't always know what's best. Could you talk about forced marriage? A guy wanting to marry someone, but parents, so I'm guessing it's a guy, insisting on marrying cousin from back home. Very common scenario, Stars. Maybe a few words on that because it's not really our topic, but nevertheless, I think it is relevant.
So the parents using their status as parents, as a battering ram to make the children submit, This is it's like Khabib, isn't it? Taking someone to the ground and punching the daylights out.
What's the new fighter come out? They're saying there's a new Muslim fighter who's got
a new guy. I can't pronounce his name quite, but he beat
Hamza
2 guys. It's something, He beat 2 guys in 10 days. In 2 different weight classes and take him down.
So he's do you think he'll beat Habib or do you think they'll not fight?
I don't think they did 2 different weight classes. This guy looks like a light heavyweight. I'm not sure. He's a different kind of guy in that sense. But he take him down, control him on the ground.
The battering ram.
Battering. So parents. I agree that parents don't always know what's best. I 100% agree with that. Parents don't always know what's best. And their children don't always know what's best. This is why you should consult with one another and discuss things. And because parents are parents, like if a parent wants you to marry someone, if the parent says, I want you to marry, we can tie these 2 together, can't we? If the parent says, I want you to marry your cousin from back home, and if you say no to this, are you disobeying your parents? You think, وَبِالْ وَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and be good to your parents, وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. So, don't say off to them. So are you allowed to say no to your parents when regards to marriage, when you've been told Islamically that you're not allowed to disrespect them? Is saying no to the parents disrespect? I don't think it is. If you don't want to marry that person, you don't have to marry that person. Whether you're a male or a female, you Islamically have the right to say no. But you respectfully say no, You say respectfully say no, right? So they put someone forward to you, they're saying to you, marry. And Sheikh, I understand this parent-child dynamic. It's a game, and you just got to play the game, So they're saying to you, marry your cousin from back home. You say, look, I'm not marrying the person. I'm not going to get married at all. I'm not marrying him or her. I'm not going to get married at all. I'm going to stay as I am. Right? I'm going to stay as I am. And you let my hala or mamu or chachu or taya know that I'm not getting married to them. I'm not getting married to the individual. And don't have your daughter sat at home or your son sat at home waiting for me, because it's not going to happen. And sometimes you just got to go quiet and just wait it out. So it's all mind games. They're just trying to say, oh, well, it's disrespectful to not listen to what your parents have got to say. And, because a lot of the time where this problem comes from is they get excited when babies are born, right? So when there's a lady here and she's had a son born, and then there's her sister in Pakistan who's got a daughter born, and they get all excited and they say that, look after us, won't you? The people in Pakistan are saying, look after us. So they've just had a baby who's 1-2 days old, and automatically they've already got these hopes up that their son's going to grow up and our daughter's going to grow up, and then we're going to do the rishta with each other.
It's a very cultural thing,
what's going to happen, right? So, these are the kind of things. And then when they get excited, they give each other their word. And then they don't want to go against their word. But that's their fault. That's the parents' fault. Why are they giving their word at such a young age? Why are they not waiting until the person reaches that age? So should parents be using their status as something to make their children submit? No, they shouldn't. It's wrong to do that. is wrong to do. And what are they ultimately doing, Sheikh Sab? They're damaging the relationship.
Damaging the life of their children. It's
They're
their future, it's their family. And there is a level of, we want our child to have somebody that's suitable for them, that's from, a similar kind of background. But that doesn't mean you have to go back home to your own village to make, pull a guy out of there who's related to your daughter or yourself, or the other way around even. Young men are also asked to go marry their cousins from, back home, India, Pakistan, or other countries. And it's not really fair. And if they say no, they have a right to say no. They don't feel it's the right decision. And if they do, they do. If they do, they do. It's just, we shouldn't be forcing anyone.
No one's
to make
allowed
that
to force anyone to get married to anyone.
Yeah, no, the forcing is not allowed. Yes.
And what happens, you see, is what I always say to parents when I'm speaking to parents and trying to get them to convince them. I'm saying, look, they're gonna have to live the life, and if you're thinking saying no to your brother or sister in Pakistan now is going to be bestie for you and dishonorable, what about when their son or daughter comes over? Your son and daughter lives with them for 2 years. Their heart's not in the marriage, their mind is not in the marriage, they don't want to be in that marriage, and it breaks down after 2 years because they were never.
That's common, Ustaz. We see, I've seen many of those situations. The children involved after a few years.
Yeah, you spend all that money, you've been over there, you then they'll say, oh, why are you not calling our daughter over to England? Why are you not going to stay in Ukraine? Then what happens is, in trying to join a relationship, you end up breaking down families, because then they'll say, we give our daughter to these lot, they didn't look after her, they didn't honor her.
Yeah, it happens.
And the brothers and sisters fall out with each other, whole generations fall out with each other. So in trying to make one link, they end up breaking the whole ship, if you like, right? The whole thing breaks. So
okay, Ustaz, there's a comment here. It says, Ustaz Ali is always hitting those nails on them heads. Barakallah feekum. I think somebody likes your approach, Ustaz. Bilal Hussein. Sister Zainab Naseem says, will this be available recorded on YouTube? Yes, if you subscribe to the channel, if you just come back at any point, the same link you probably joined here, then you can just watch it again. It's recorded. Sister Alia is saying, Salam Sheikhs, Walaikum Salam. Please can you discuss the relevance of status and family cohesion in the context of the hadith on marrying a male with good deen and good character, the one thing that you mentioned, Ustaz, and bringing family cohesion into the context of that hadith. So he's good, she's good, they all, really nice people, but what about family cohesion? How does that work in all of this?
The thing is, there needs to be cohesion.
Will they get on with each other?
Yeah, the thing is that there needs to be in cohesion between the individuals, and there also needs to be cohesion between the families. And the bottom line is that if both families are religious and they use Quran and Sunnah as their guide, then there will be cohesion between the families, right? So now I always mention that, marry someone who is willing to be controlled, and then people say, what do you mean willing to be controlled? Why don't I marry a controlling person? Someone who's kind of controlling. No, marry someone who's willing to be controlled by the Quran and Sunnah.
Yeah,
right. Because someone who's willing to be controlled by the Quran and Sunnah is going to be a very good spouse to have. Marrying into a family that is controlled by the Quran and Sunnah is going to be a very good family to marry into, because whatever they do, whatever they say, the decisions they make, or the ethos will all be based around the prophetic teachings and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
I agree with you on that, Ustaz.
That's where the family cohesion will come from.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with you, Ustaz, that you have to look at the bigger picture, like the sister is asking, and you have to look at how everyone will get along in the future. Because remember, when you have children, that's a grandchild of the both families, both that's parents. Right. That's the nephew of both spouses, siblings. That's the it's a so that child has to grow up with these two families. So are you okay with your child, your grandchild, your nephew, niece being part of that family and that upbringing and the akhlaq and the adab and the kind of things they celebrate, they enjoy, the lifestyle? Because if they're not, you're going to find big clashes, because sometimes that is a factor in things. Also, I think the family cohesion extends to above and below.
The Aqidah point comes in here, does it, Sheikh? The Aqidah point comes in here, for example.
It does. Yeah. When you're going to celebrate Eid, when you're going to celebrate Eid, because
now this time ittifaq nal ittifaq ho gaya hai, Eid na. Check. It's ittifaq. It's coincidence, ittifaq, that there is ittifaq now for Eid. That the Saudis didn't see the moon when they tried sighting it. They had to complete 30 days. And then in Morocco, they sighted the moon, and it happened to be that the Eid's on the same day, on Friday. But now if you marry someone who's, and normally most of the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah do Eid on the same day, right? Those who follow Saudi, they'll end up doing a different day. And now what you've got here is, we're talking about, the sisters mentioning the family cohesion. Where's the family cohesion? We're doing Eid on 2 different days. right? Where's the family cohesion on one family side wanting to do Mawlid and the other saying it is shirk and bid'ah, right? Where's the family cohesion on many things? So this is why Aqidah is also a very key point with regards to compatibility. And I will mention that when a person looking to get married, someone who's from the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah should only marry someone who's also from Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, not outside of that. In order to
that's very important,
because our scholars mention in regards to Aqidah, what do they say? They say those who go against the way of the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah have allied themselves with error. Imam Tahawi mentioned this in Aqidah.
says that,
we renounce any connection with them, and in our opinion, they are in error and astray. This is what Imam Tahawi is mentioning regarding those who are outside of the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah and do not agree with the tenets of faith, the zururiyat and the essential components of the deen. So family cohesion comes by making sure that the mindset, the religious background, the aqidah, all of
without a doubt,
and correct. So,
but some people, Ustaz, actually they love having two Eids as well. If they do have to go through that,
but
sometimes
anyway,
you can enjoy two Eids with two families. One day you go to it works for married couples, Ustaz, because one day they can go to the one family and celebrate Eid there, and then the other day they can go to the other family. Well, if they have one Eid, you're separated.
But you can't go. You can't go if you're fasting, can you? There's a problem.
Well, true. If it's Ramadan, you can secret fast on the day until Maghrib, can't you? I suppose.
Yeah, but in Ramadan you're fasting.
I'm just throwing it out there that some people they may well be in this situation, and they may well, let's say, be positive in the difference as well. I'm just saying. Same system.
I think that difference either results in compromise or conflict. Those people
it may well do.
It's either conflict or compromise. It's either they're conflicting all the time, or they've decided to compromise and someone's back down. And either both.
I think that I do believe there are married couples that can celebrate that difference as well. I personally believe, Ustaz. They are very relaxed, mellow people in the world, Ustaz. We're not all like militant. We don't all have to cut the person down to win the game or something. Anyway, Ustaz, just move. Let's answer these questions because I really want to address what our viewers have sent in. So, Sister Ali has also asked, we kind of talked about this, but we can just quickly maybe a few comments. If a Rifa is strong in deen and character, can there still be grounds to reject? Looking at it from the perspective of Reverts, this perspective is making it difficult for them to get married. That is what I said, and I think Ustaz
the point is, at the end of the day, if the family are happy for their daughter to marry a Revert,
and I think practically speaking, Ustaz, what we've said is practically what happens. When there's a good brother, he's been in the deen for a while, they know his akhlaq, they know his kind of behavior, and if they're brothers, uncles, father, of course, are all happy with.
It's not an issue for them. It's not an issue. It's okay.
It's not an issue. And I think if they've got genuine concerns, they have to voice them. But I think there's got to be genuine concerns, not just he's not our culture. I think that needs to be looked at a bit differently. It says here, I thought marriage can take place in the Hanafi school even without parental approval. Brother here thinks he's Shaykh al-Islam. He says yes, it can, but it's better to have the consent or blessing, I believe, of parents. So Ustaz, he did correct it there, so I'll just mention. Well done, Rizwan.
So here, Sheikh, I thought marriage can still take place in the Hanafi school even without parental approval. The thing here is, okay, marriage can take place without parental approval, and it's permissible. But is everything permissible worth doing? Right? It's permissible.
And I would like to say that opinion is considered to be a debatable one as well.
Yes,
okay?
it is.
It's not clear cut as it is. The reason why the opinion came about was because of problems. And the early Muslims, to think about this, there were problems in the time of the great Imams. And we're saying 50, 100 years after the Prophet ﷺ, they saw the problems. And the Imam said because of what they saw, they gave that ruling. So it's based on the context of culture, of what was going on in society. They gave that ruling. They said, you know what? Yes, you can, because, whereas if you look at it from a very scriptural, proof basis, I personally believe the argument is stronger for
La nikah illa bi waliyin.
I think it's much stronger. Although there is differences of opinion on that, and yes, it is correct that there are the schools of thought that allow that, but I think that's a very dangerous thing to practice and
See,
take
this
to the
particular
public.
point, I'll be honest with you, this particular point, I don't mention openly because people take it the wrong way.
Yeah.
People think, oh yeah, we can go and get married and we can do whatever we want. And it leads in damage. It leads in damage.
It does
and it leads
damage,
to a breakdown in society and a breakdown in families.
And I would say, Ustaz, though, if there is a genuine situation where there is that case of there could be a good marriage, there's particular reasons, or there's lack of parent involvement, and the individuals go and seek scholarly advice from well-known scholars, not some random brother who's knowledgeable or who's commenting on Facebook or something, or Twitter or whatever, YouTube videos, but knows the deen, knows what to, put into the minds of these individuals and get things out in the open, because it's not supposed to be secretly done either. Because I know of people who've been secretly told to get married behind their parents' back because it's a valid nikah. They go and get married, and then they struggle to get the parents' approval for many, many years, and it breaks the families up. Or they do, get it in the end, but it's caused a lot of problems, etc. A lot of it doesn't come out nice. A lot of it comes out very difficult, very awkward for them. So I think this needs to be something that we take with guidance. We don't just take it out in the open and say, okay, whatever, right? I think it's something that needs to be done with involvement of as many people as possible, if it's to go ahead without the parents, if it's to go ahead without the wali. And personally, I've never been involved in a situation like that, and I wouldn't. I know scholars that do that. I know they take that, but I personally don't agree with it.
I've had people say, "Oh, will you do a nikah between me and my girlfriend?"
Yeah,
tell her dad to ring me. Oh, her dad doesn't know. Tell her mom to ring me. Her mom doesn't know. Tell your dad to ring me. He doesn't know. Tell your mom to ring me. She doesn't know. I said, look, if your sister's boyfriend rung me and said to me that get me married to my girlfriend, your sister now, are you happy for me to get your sister's nikah done with next month? You wouldn't be. You'll want to go break his legs, and you'll break my legs after that for doing the nikah. And why is it okay for you to do that with somebody else's sister? She's living under the father's roof. He's got every right. What are you going to do? Just go marry her and then leave her after a little while? So it's very, very important that the families are involved. And, otherwise, what does that leave? It leaves the women folk vulnerable to exploitation.
Vulnerable, yeah. They're always in the weaker
Islam
position.
Islam is there to protect, not to protect those who may potentially be vulnerable. So I would never do a nikah without the wali being there.
And I think generally, Ustaz, secret marriages in general, the whole idea is just an anomaly. Secret marriage, the whole concept of marriage, public. The whole sunnah and the way of the Islam and the Prophet ﷺ is marriage announcement, big party. Tell the community. Tell the community, that's the main thing. You're keeping it a secret. It goes against the whole idea of nikah and whole idea of getting together as a spouse, family relationship. Who are you keeping? So, people, you're sinful for making people think you're doing zina. You two are going out, doing stuff together. We're married. Well, you're not married because you're not telling anyone. They think, they're committing zina. That's blemish on your parents and your parents and your family and your family and yourselves, for goodness sake. So you've got to tell people you're married. Who are you going to tell? Strangers. You're going to tell the community you live in, and they're going to tell your parents, right? You can't escape your parents knowing. So I think the whole concept of secret, we need to change it from secret vows to sacred vows, Ustaz. What do you think?
That's mashallah, very good. Good mention.
Yeah.
Good mention.
So rather than having secret vows, guys, join sacred vows. www.sacred-vows.co.uk. It's a project that I was involved in a long time ago. Still am supporting it. Still am fully behind it. And it's not perfect, but trust me, there's hardly anything else out there that looks after the rights of both spouses, respects the families, gets parental family involvement from the word go,
providing a crucial service.
Facilitate. It's really needed. So check us out, please, on Sacred Vow. I'll put it in the comments. I can type it in on here. Sacred vows.co.uk. So it's in the comment section, and I'll put it up on the screen in a second as well when it shows up. So you can see it there. If you go visit that website, www.sacred-vows.co.uk, have a look at the website, browse. It's free sign up, so just to sign up, register your name, it's free. If you want to go into the look at the profiles and everything and see how it works, if you want to email somebody for more information before you sign up, etc., please do. It's a service out there that hopefully will fill some void. It can't fill everything. It's not for everyone, but definitely if you're very traditional, you want parent involvement, and you're looking for someone, you're finding it hard through the current avenues you have, then it's definitely one worth looking into. So please do have a look at sacred-vows.co.uk. But let's get back to the questions from our viewers, Ustaz. And here we have, I think, is we're not talking about this. If a potential spouse was born an illegitimate child, so was born out of wedlock, would that be a valid grounds on the principle of lineage to reject? I think it's a very good question, actually. So somebody
a good
who's
question.
not born, yeah. So obviously the mother is known because that's who gives birth, but the father is not there because it's as we say, illegitimate, non.
But this illegitimate child is an adult now, yeah.
Yes, of course.
And now looking to get married.
Yep.
The thing, I don't know the answer to the question. That's my first thing.
So from my understanding, Ustaz, obviously the lineage of a child, if you talk just about lineage, when there's no father, is with the mother. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're just looking at it from a lineage perspective, it's the mother's lineage.
Yeah.
But I think it comes back to the idea of who is he? What has he done in his whole life?
Yeah.
Right. Yes, and just to remind everyone here, and it's something we need to really clarify, just like the convert, just like the slave, just like the waladuz zina, it is traditionally in books you do see a sort of I don't want to say a negativity towards these particular people, but a general kind of ruling where they wouldn't be at the highest level. They wouldn't be considered to be imam of the masjid, or somebody to be relied upon in a marriage or in a contractual situation, or generally. Why? Because traditionally, majority or often, if a child's born out of wedlock, there's no father, nobody wants to look after him, nobody takes the responsibility of nurturing him. The fatherly figure, the morals, generally the orphans they came out maybe in crime, maybe in other kind of, due to the vacuum of the fatherless life, which is proven by the way.
Today as well. Like we see today.
See, exactly. It's
a lot
proven,
of people who are involved in crime, they're from single families and single parent
exactly. We
households.
talked about this in one of our podcasts, Imran, talking about the fatherness and how that affects the child. Even when there's actually a lineage and a father, but the father disappears, it has a negative impact on the child. So based on that, yes, a legitimate child or a fatherless child was seen as somebody or someone who might be less, in the sense of how society kind of views that, or it just generally pans out for the individual. However, if it pans out good for him, he's a scholar, he's a solicitor, he's a politician, he's somebody respected in the community. Just because he was born out of wedlock, his parents, etc., doesn't make him a bad person, and he's more than a worthy match for many a daughter. But then the question comes, I think the crux of the matter comes to, well, people are going to say you married your son or your daughter to somebody born out of wedlock. How does that look on the family, etc.?
But do people know that? Again, I suppose is this common knowledge? Do people know that?
Yeah, I think now today's day and age is not like it was back then. Again, don't think people even consider that a major thing. To look at the person. Look, end of the day, many people are born out of wedlock. It's not something we like or commend or anything, but it happens, right? And it doesn't detract from that person's manners, akhlaq, his morals, his.
It's no fault of his own, is it? Yeah,
exactly. So I think on a level, the parents should be happy and not use that as an excuse, saying Islamically, no, not allowed, or this, that, the other. I think it may well be a cultural shock, or some cultures or some individuals, families may not be very approving or accommodating of that, which is possible. But Islamically, I think we shouldn't use that as an excuse, because it's not the norm that anybody who's just born out of wedlock is a bad person. We've got another one here. It says, forcing a person to get married to another person. Is the nikah invalidated? So is it invalid nikah when there's force, or as there's no consent? How does this work? So what is a forced marriage? Is it a valid marriage? Is it nikah fasid? Is it incorrect? Or what's the outcome of such a contract, or possibly no contract? What is?
You see that in order for a nikah to be valid, there has to be an offer and acceptance. If the female, for example, I'll give you an example. There was a sister, and she didn't want to marry this guy, but her family put pressure on her. Now, pressurized, she's under pressure. And when the Imam Sahib asked her, do you accept, or do you make your father, allow him to be your guardian and your wakil and do the nikah on your behalf? She said, cool. Instead of saying Kabul, she said cool.
Cool. I was like, what's going on there?
So instead of saying Kabul, she said cool. And the Imam thought she said Kabul, right? But she still said cool, didn't she? If she remained silent and didn't say anything,
that's acceptance.
That's acceptance. Or if she said to the Imam, he said, do you accept? And she said no. then there would be no nikah, because he wouldn't go ahead and do the nikah then, right? But if she remains silent, then her silence is acceptance. And if she
Approval,
said yes, cool hai, kabool hai, theek hai, let's go, any of them,
I'm
then
on.
that's
We're on.
so then what we mean by forced marriage is forced marriage will be where the person has not consented.
Yeah.
And if they've not consented, there will be no nikah. If they have consented under pressure, the nikah will be there. But if they feel that they have adequate grounds for the annulment of that nikah, then they would need to explore that particular avenue.
Yeah. I think that's important to mention here, that, at the end of the day, we don't know what's in the heart of anybody, right?
You might be blackmailed
to
agree, but you agree.
Exactly. We don't know why somebody's saying what they're saying. If they openly, outwardly agree to the nikah, say yes, they could be forced inwardly. They could be blackmailed emotionally, physically, beaten, whatever. But if on the day, openly to the public, to the witnesses, they say yes, qabool, they say cool, whatever they say, they don't object to the nikah, then what do we understand? That they got married. So it's a valid marriage outwardly. When we say a forced marriage is not valid, we actually mean when the actual person says, no, I don't agree to this marriage. I don't consent. You're forcing me. You forced my hand. No, you forced my hand. I wasn't consenting. You can force people physically. You can make them force. If they're forced to say it with a gun to their head or something.
Force to sign or something. That kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. In those situations, that was not consent. There was no consent, and it's not a valid nikah. So we've got to be clear that when we say forced, what do we mean? Physically forced, or murder forced, or you're going to kill your family.
Sheikh, here when people talk about forced, I think they mean pressurized, but we said yes.
Pressurized,
I think they mean pressurized, but we said yes, and we were forced, but we still said yes at the end of it. Basically, that's the thing.
So in that situation, if you just felt the pressure and said yes, then it is a valid nikah. But if you're not happy with that decision, then like you said, you need to explore the avenue of annulment, or going to the Sharia court, or the mufti, etc., and finding a way to sort out all of that. And often a good situation, or good way to deal with this, advice for everyone, is set your mahar high in this situation. If you're not happy, set it very, very high, like tens and hundreds of thousands of pounds. And if you want to get out of the marriage, then what you say is, look, we'll consider the nikah annulled, and to annul it, I'll forgive the £10,000 nikah mahar. When you want to pay me £10,000, I'll come with the marriage. So when it comes to that, people are like, £10,000, and then the qadi will say, actually, if you don't give her the £10,000, we're not going to allow you. We're going to keep you apart for that time. She deserves a mahar before you have any right to, etc. So it could be a bit of a barrier there. Like, why are you asking for a big nikah? To show you that we're not happy with you, in a sense. It's not a solution. It's just a one step one could take to avoid problems later on. And unfortunately, cause problems as well, because I know in Syria, I was speaking to some of my teachers there. They said they put the mahar very high in Syria, hundreds of thousands of pounds of stars, hundreds of £1,000 mahar. Like £100,000 is the mahar of the lady. That's how high it is, right? Why does it cause problems for? The husband wants to get out of the marriage. If he divorces her, on the paper it says £100,000. He has to pay £100,000. He doesn't want to divorce her. What does he want? He wants annulment. How does he get an annulment? Forces it out of her. So abuse takes place. For her to say, "I forgive the mahar. You don't have to pay me. You can get out of the marriage."
So they're trying to put something in place to protect her, but it's working against
protect people. But it worked again in the long run. Afterwards, it worked against it. So the higher mahar has, I think, in some hadith been negatively portrayed as well. So we need to be careful about that. Just some scenario I thought it'd be good to share with our viewers.
That's a good point. Good point.
We have here, it says it's a sad reality to culture as opposed to deen. There should be a level of culture, but not overwhelming the deen. What are your thoughts on two divorcees looking to get married, but the parents are not accepting due to caste differences, as Aqidah is the same, Sunnah, alhamdulillah, and also a child involved? Is it not selfish when both divorced individuals are part of a tariq? I think that's a good one. Tariq comes into it, which means spiritual path. So, Ustaz, over to you. They're compatible, they want to get married, they're divorcees, there's a child involved, they have a similar mindset, tariq, spiritual path, but parents don't want it. What do we do now?
Sheikh, here I think some parents unnecessarily put obstacles in place and hurdles in place. We know Islamically, even from the Islamic law, that a female a female who's already been married, for example, we said that the female who's never been married before, for example, her silence is approval. But female who has been married, she has to verbally say and agree. She has to speak. So the rules are a little bit different from a non-married to a married woman. who's previously been married. If they're both divorcees, they've had some experience of life, and things are not the same. So, and looking at the age of these individuals now as well, that they've already been married before, and there's a child involved as well, for example, I would say that
there's another part to this message as well. It says, and trying hard to fulfill the sunnah, and have waiting. So they've been waiting over 1.5 years for the parents to accept, yet not moving. So sorry, Ustaz, carry on.
So no, it's fine, Sheikh. What I would say is that there comes a point, this is my own personal advice as well, is there comes a point where children are now adults, and you are a parent yourself. So if there's a child involved, them parents are now grandparents, and you are a parent yourself as well. So now there comes a point where you can't let them be a obstacle in the way, and you got to make your own decision. And chances are, what I would say is to both individuals, as long as the other person is meets the criteria, they're religious, etc., you're both happy with it, speak to a scholar, local scholar, who can ensure that the person you wanted to marry does actually meet the criteria. You're not just blinded by love or something like that. And if the individuals want to get married, then get the imam or the local scholar to speak to the parents on both sides and say, look, they want to get married, they're both divorcees, and the culture, the situation we're in is not good. They've already been waiting for 1.5 years, and don't delay, because the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned in a hadith Mubarak, saying to Hazrat Ali radiallahu an, that don't delay in 3 things. One of them, don't delay in feeding the guest. Secondly, don't delay in burying the deceased when the body has been prepared and washed and janazah is present. And thirdly, don't delay marrying off your daughter, or don't delay marrying off a lady who hasn't got a husband when you find someone compatible for her. Right? So if there's somebody who's compatible according to the criteria things we mentioned, having 2 individuals who previously been married, waiting around for 1.5 years, I think the parents need a bit of pressure putting on them from someone externally, maybe an elder in the family, maybe someone, an uncle or someone who can have some influence. And ultimately the 2 individuals need to assess their situation and make a decision to move forward. But are they at that age completely bound by their parents and have to keep the parents happy? Well, you're adults yourself now as well. That's as much as I'll say.
I think that's very important that we understand that. Let's get everyone involved, right? So if your parents are listening, have you been to your aunties, your uncles? Have the elders of your parents spoken to them? I think people, if you were compatible and they saw that, would support you. So bring the people together. Don't like make it as public as possible. Say, look, this is we want to do this. Bring in your friends, family, so everyone gets to know it. These 2 are just waiting, and only reason is the parents. So if parents think like, wait a minute, the community all knows, they're waiting. Other people are talking to us about it. It's just us right now that are the barriers. So that will hopefully be a big way of changing the thinking and getting over that hurdle. But it's easier said than done. It takes a lot of time.
And Sheikh, even I would say, sometimes it is a bit of a game. So if they're both people said to their respective parents, look, I'm an adult and I'm going to get married anyway, right? If you agree or you don't agree, I'm going to get married. So you might as well agree and we do it nicely and see what that does. No, I'm not saying you're going to go ahead and do that, but it's a game. So you say, look, maybe say we could
call my bluff.
Call my bluff. So I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. I'm an adult. I've been married before. I'm not sitting around waiting forever, right? I'm going to go ahead and do it. And if I'd love for you to be part of it, and if you're gonna, that's great. And if you're not, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And more is it for you in you being with me than not being with me. Try that.
Okay, we're gonna have to wind up, Ustaz, because time is getting on. And
no problem.
I think our viewers are enjoying the show, and alhamdulillah, it's been very beneficial. We've got a message here from Ifrat Ahmed saying, Ustaz Muhammad Ali, brilliant speaker. I agree. I was always very clear on the issues that are contributing in many communities struggling that people face. Barakallah for him coming upon our show. Quickly, just talk about this, Ustaz. We have mentioned, is that Mourinho? Come on, lad. Naveed, you need to do a bit of tawbah there as well. It says, what are the Islamic attitudes to dating apps? Good. So we've mentioned sacred vows and genuine dating apps. Wait a minute. Marriage apps or dating apps? Tawbah. Come on, Nav. What's going on here? Stars, I think it's pretty straightforward answer.
If they say Islamic attitude to dating apps, you might as well say, what's Islamic attitude to dating? There's no such thing as dating Islamically, right?
Exactly.
And that's the bottom line. There's no dating involved. Islam doesn't allow dating, and that's it. So if the dating app is a means to date, then because dating is haram, then dating apps will be haram.
Stars,
because whatever leads to haram is haram.
I love dates. We allow dates, you know.
Oh, the dates, khulle khao na.
Yeah, they're
And
very
you
good
know,
for you.
could
Amino
have
acids, proteins.
I could tell you how to have a halal date if somebody wanted to have a halal date. There's ways of having
Yeah,
halal dates.
so what do you mean by dating? If they mean you getting in touch with somebody else who you've never met before without anybody's consent or without anybody's awareness and just meeting up and talking,
In private,
chit-chatting
going
even
to
over
watch a
the mobile,
movie, yeah,
messaging each other, secret marriages develop from this, like we said
yeah,
earlier, messaging to Facebook, Twitter, these kind
yeah.
of things. These are all very
Going to
either haram or
cinema,
borderline haram.
going to a restaurant for
Exactly,
a meal,
because
that kind of stuff.
you're overstepping the line of modesty of another person's privacy, the aura, the rulings of being alone with somebody else, and shaitan being the third. And this is very disrespectful as well to
Yeah.
the whole family and Islam and everything. It's just it's not on basically. If you're talking about marriage apps, then if marriage apps are chaperoned or looked
Sharia
after,
compliant, basically.
Sharia compliant, and
Yeah,
there are
like
several
Sacred
companies
Vows
or apps out there. Like Sacred Vows we mentioned earlier, I'll throw you up again. There you go. If you check that one out, I believe they are developing an app. So Sacred Vows will, inshallah, in the coming future, I don't know how the timescales on it, but will be. They definitely, I know they have looked into an app-based system. But it's marriage, it's not dating, of course. So it's with parent involvement, family involvement as well. You mentioned here, Ustaz, that if a spouse left Islam, that renders the nikah void. This may be stating the obvious, but if marital relations continued, would that be zina? Just on this point, I just saw a book the other day that I purchased from Syria, and it was called the actual title of the book. It was I think it was like a master's or somebody did it for their studies. But I just bought the book. It was what's the ruling on if one of the spouses leaves Islam on the marriage. There was a whole book written on that by Mustafa Bugha, I think his name was. He was part of his university studies, I think. And basically, there's differences of opinion over when the nikah ends, but they all agree to answer that question that no relations are allowed. And any relations that do take place would be considered haram and wrong. But they actually say that if the husband or the wife apostates, then they have the iddah period to decide to get for one of them to repent and become Muslim again, and they don't have to renew their nikah, Ustaz. That's actually the Hanafi opinion.
Yeah.
So if within the, so she goes on to iddah straight away. If she's the non-Muslim, she goes on to iddah. If he apostates, she goes into iddah. It's automatic.
Yeah.
Now in the iddah period is the waiting period after divorce, and it counts as one divorce as well, by the way. So the apostasy counts as a divorce. And so they go to that period. Now in that period, they're not allowed to have relations, and that's haram, right? But they're still considered contractually to be husband and wife. So if he was to repent and embrace Islam, or she was to repent and embrace Islam in that situation, the nikah would not need to be renewed. It stays intact. Okay. But it still counts as a divorce though. So one divorce has taken place due to what happened, but they can come back into the nikah. There's more details. It works different from both sides slightly, I remember. But it's a full book written on it, and I read most of it. And it's different from different schools of thought. But in terms of that, answer that question, it would mean they are in zina. And they're trying to. So we've had that. So that was the last comment that we've got to start. So any final words from yourself before we call it a day?
Final word, Sheikh, is that I think parent involvement is crucial. I think the involvement of their children is crucial as well. I think each one needs to compromise at times. I think parents need to move on from this baladri thing. That the funny thing is, everyone seems to think that their baladri is the highest
the best.
And I'm still waiting. I'm still trying to find a list of like you have the league table, who is the top. Right, because this person says their bradery is lower than ours, and this bradery says theirs is lower than ours, and everyone is saying that their bradery is highest and everyone else is the lowest. Right? I think they need to get out of that and realize that this is causing massive issues to their own children. They're creating obstacles that don't need to be there. And in fact, I've not done this, but what I might do is discuss this issue in a short video in Urdu.
Okay.
Right, and Patwari. And basically get the message, because when we speak in English, we are catering for our English-speaking audience, right? But what we want the parents to sort themselves out, those who are still stuck in this baradri situation, right? So what I might do is address it in a language they understand, in a way that they understand, which inshallah will hit home the message for them as well. But the main thing is seeking guidance, seeking guidance from learned people, seeking guidance, because and the last point I'll mention is this, that whenever we advise, we're not emotionally attached. the individual is emotionally invested and attached. The parents are emotionally attached to the situation, but we are not emotionally attached. And we
just want the best.
We will always want the best for the parents. We will want the best for everybody involved, because ultimately we are answerable before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this amana, which is, learning, teaching and spreading the deen. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept what has been discussed. There's many more things that could have been discussed. We hope that the viewers found it useful, inshallah. And over to you, Sheikh. Jazakallah khairan for inviting me.
Jazakallah khairan to you, Ustaz, for coming on. Beautiful discussion. A lot to take in. What I'd like to say before we finish is this is not a black and white subject. It's not yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. There are various parameters. There are various issues. We've discussed amongst ourselves. We've disagreed on some things. Because it's not a black and white area, times have changed. People have changed. Rulings are based on cultural settings sometimes, on how things are interpreted sometimes, and so forth. But what I would echo the sentiments of Ustaz Muhammad Ali there, that we need to get everyone involved. We need everyone to start understanding. It may be that the cultural differences or the Baradi has an impact. It may be, but we need to understand that and show it has before we make a decision. If it's not, and it's just a way of thinking that's just we're stuck in, then no, that's not a valid form. So we need to assess things. We need to be open and discuss, and not be, my way or the highway attitude. This requires a lot of communication. And like Ustaz said, you don't have to get scholars involved. You can get elders involved. You can get experience involved. It says in the Quran, if the husband and spouse have issues, hakaman min ahlihi wa hakaman min ahliha. Bring an arbitrator, somebody who can judge from his family, from her family, come together. So getting involvement is very important for your situations before, during, and probably various stages of the marital journey. So don't think you're alone. We're here to support. There's community members to support. Reach out to your neighbors, the elders, the uncles and aunties that are respectable. They get involved. They help each other. They help you, inshallah ta'ala. And for us and for them, it's an honor to help a fellow Muslim, somebody in society. It's a great reward with Allah Almighty. We're not looking for any recognition. We genuinely want to help those people out there. That's why we set up Sacred Vows. That's why we're doing this show for you today. And that's why we'll inshallah help whenever and wherever we can. Finally from me, Assalamu alaikum, Eid Mubarak. Have a blessed Eid. Start your takbirat, Fajr tomorrow. You got Isha now for myself, not pretty sure. Fajr prayer, I'm going to be saying Allahu Akbar after my prayer. I hope you all are, because we've got the takbirat at Tashriq. You've got your qurbani to do. You've got your du'as for me to do on Arafat, on Hajj, on Eid.
Inshallah.
And you'll accept the Hajj of everyone who's making Hajj. And goodbye from me. Over to Ustaz for one final goodbye. Over to you.
One final thing, if I may, just this question that's on the screen, are you right for me? This question has to be asked before you are emotionally invested. Because if you don't ask this question before you're emotionally invested, you will rephrase this. You say, you are right for me.
Same words. You swap them around.
You will readjust them. So when you're not emotionally invested, it will be, are you right for me? And when you are emotionally connected and invested, then you will say, you are right for me. Right? So this is something that needs to be considered early on. Jazakallah khairan for listening to us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Take care.